Cohasset, and welcome to another edition of Our Town. I'm Mark DeGiacomo. My co-host here is Pat Martin.
How you doing?
I'm well.
So we are filming our last of the interviews of the Selectmen candidates that will be seeking your votes come the election of May 11th. With us tonight is Russ Bonetti. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So Russ, start us off by just telling folks a little bit about yourself.
I've lived here in town 28 years. I grew up in a military family, and this has really become home for me. In fact, actually, I had never heard of Cohasset, and I brought a friend's sailboat down one time, and we put in at the end of Parker Ave, walked into town, and I called a friend of ours who was a realtor and said, if you ever see a house on Parker Ave, give me a call. 3 years later, she called us, and in we moved. But since
Good broker.
yeah,
3 years
oh
later.
yeah, she kept notes, and it worked out well for all of us actually. You know, I like the small town feel of the town, and I like the proximity to the water. But since I've been here, I've been on various committees. I started off. Mary Fleming from Fleming's Store used to live across the street from us, and she introduced me to Noel Ripley and Ham Tewksbury. And it was sort of all over from there.
Yeah.
I was on
Sucked you right in.
Yeah, I was on Government Island with Ham for quite a few years. And then he and I were on the Haggerty Committee developing Mariners Park at the end of the street. I know you guys know what Haggerty is, but a lot of people coming into town now, you tell them the Haggerty property, they have no idea, but it's, we saved the two buildings there, one which has CSCR in it, and the other has CMI in it. We developed a walkway which has increased the amount of foot traffic through the area immensely, and it's really nice to see it. You kind of have more of a loop when you walk around. But then I was on the Harbor Health Committee, and I worked on getting the waters off our coast as a no discharge zone, which connected a bunch of other areas. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of towns that haven't signed into it, but we completed a loop that takes us, I believe, all the way down to Plymouth now. And then I'm currently on the Community Preservation Committee, and I've been very, very pleased with the great group of people.
Russ, you're running for selectman at a kind of a tough time for Cohasset.
Yeah.
The town is very much divided on several issues. Why jump in at this point?
Honestly, that was what the impetus was. I'd thought about doing it before, and I never did explore much beyond sitting there thinking about it. The divisiveness in town right now has created such a poisonous atmosphere that it's almost like the town could grind to a halt and have a fist fight break out in the common, and it's scary to me. And I want to be able to try to bring back a sense of finding a middle ground on the board and trying to let people know. There's a lot of people who think that they're not being listened to, either private citizens or committees or whatnot. And I've always been able to work with both sides of issues. And actually, I was on Harbor Health with Karen. I'm on CPC with Lee. He nominated me for chairman. I'll have to find a way to thank him for that someday. And Steve Gaumer and I have had a voluntary, CPC doesn't have to go to the Capital Budget Committee, but we have recently, when we have large projects, such as the town hall renovation for the bid drawings, we can look at things in a more of an emotional way, in a sense, because of the nature of the CPC. But it's good to get guys who look at the numbers. So I've worked well with them. I campaigned for Freddie. I campaigned on both of Ralph's campaigns, Paul Carlson's. I've been able to disagree with people in a, I like to think, respectable way, and still manage to salvage some civility out of it at the end, so that we can reach some kind of a mutual understanding, or just be able to admit that, we're not going to agree, but that doesn't make you a bad guy.
Do you think this chasm is coming out of the town manager act or the acting town manager status? We've heard both sides where folks feel like, well, we need to have a strong town manager and he should be allowed to do what he needs to do without interference or approval on certain things from the selectmen. And then we hear others who say, no, to represent the town, he should listen to the people and take suggestions and run things through to the selectmen. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that might be the big issue that's causing people?
I wouldn't want to lay it on one person necessarily. When you look at the number of town managers we've gone through, when Bill came in after Mark, he was the right guy for the time. I always thought, in that he kind of brought a sense of security to the employees. I mean, we all know there certainly were financial problems that none of us were aware of, but shame on us for not paying attention. And then we had Steve, who was very good, but there was, there wasn't a steady hand on the helm. And I think it gave various groups an opportunity to either feel that they had been shortchanged in some way, or that another group was trying to break in on their turf, or what. And I think it's that. There is a great deal of unhappiness with the current situation. It is an acting town manager who started off as a volunteer and suddenly is making some very good money without having gone through the process. I think a lot of people are concerned that the process wasn't followed. It calls for a search, and we should do one. If in the end Mike is the best of the candidates, well, let's hire him. But we have nothing to lose. But when we do it, we have to pay a lot more attention than we did the last time.
But Mike may not have an opportunity to be a candidate, depending on what happens at the upcoming town meeting.
Yeah.
How will you vote on that article to amend the Town Manager Act?
I think it still needs a little work. On the qualification end of things, it's requiring an assistant town manager have a master's degree, but no qualifications on the town manager's side. And it could be a master's degree or a similar experience. In state jobs, quite often, they'll say that they're looking for a master's degree or equivalent, and then they'll tell you what the equivalent is. 2 years in the job is 1 year towards a master or whatever. So while I don't have a problem that it doesn't require the town manager to have one, I sort of do that it requires their assistant to have one.
What about the piece that's the most controversial that was previously voted on at the last town meeting, is back now, as far as the town manager not being able to have served on any board for a period of time?
I think that's a good idea.
So the good idea to change it, or you think it should stay the same?
I think it should stay.
Stay the same.
I think it seems to me that while we have a lot of very, very talented people, that right now that may be something we want to keep and amend in the future even, if for no other reason than to try to get rid of this feeling on so many people that these jobs are all inside jobs, and try to restore a sense of confidence in the town government. I think it's a great idea that selectmen not be on it for at least 15 months. But if you are on a board, and particularly one that picks the town managers, I don't feel that comfortable with it.
So you'll be voting no on that article?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the process and the result of the search for the Mike Coughlin? How do you think that worked out?
Not well. We have a house in Narragansett, and one of our neighbors is from Southbridge. And I won't use all the words he said when I said, that we had hired him. And same in Westport. He had a very combative style, I think, and it could have been found a lot easier than it was. I mean, one of the problems, though, you know, I'm no fan of the blogs getting my head kicked in the last couple weekends. And if you want to talk about more on those later, that's fine too. You have to discount a great deal of it, but somewhere in there, you might start seeing patterns, and even a Google search would have turned up some things that would make you, I think he knew what he was doing. He had a very bad bedside manner.
So the Coughlin hiring is one thing that it sounds like you would have done differently, you would have looked into more if you had been on the board at the time. What else in the last few years do you think that if you had been on the Board of Selectmen, you would have done differently than the board as a whole did?
How many choices?
Yeah, just pick your top three.
Top three? I think the wholesale gutting of the Conservation Commission was just awful. I mean, not because these were people who were friends of mine for the most part, and others who were just very good acquaintances, but Concom, Zoning Board, Planning Board are committees that really benefit from institutional knowledge, and now especially where we were losing V. Roebuck. That's one of those jobs that you get into. It's got a long ramping up period to get up to all the regulations through EPA and the locals on the state dealing with Army Corps and issues like that. And I think it was regrettable that they did what they did to it.
What do you do when we interviewed Lee and talked to him about that? He said that he had been to some of their meetings and just felt that the demeanor, the way they were treating the public was not the way he'd like to see the public treated, and that was his reason for moving them. So assume for the sake of discussion that you were to go to a meeting of an appointed board, and then you came away with that same feeling. How would you deal with it?
I'd go to quite a few meetings first. I've been in front of Concom a number of occasions, and I never had any problems with them on things. I got asked some questions I thought were a little off the wall, but overall I found them cooperative, particularly somebody like V. I didn't get the impression that they were just saying absolutely no, but they would say, you can't do it that way, but if you tried to do it this way, has been my experience.
But if you were at a committee, whatever committee, an appointed committee, and you came away with the feeling like, geez, these people just they're not treating the people of Cohasset right. What would you do?
I'd request to talk with them first, and it may. I mean, to a certain extent too, it depends whose ox is being gored. If you're on the side of someone who's not doing so well, you may find them not receptive. If you're on the side that's agreeing with what they're doing, you may find that it's a strong defense. But I think you owe it to the board to sit with them and express what your concerns are. We recently did that on CPC. Howie Altolt, who had some major concerns about two of our projects and was quite outspoken about it. We had him in, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago as an agenda item, not during 5-minute discussion period. It was on for 15 minutes. We went about 35, maybe 40 minutes. And I think that's how you approach those things. He came in, he had some suggestions for us. Now that town meeting's over, we'll start looking at those. And I think you gain two things. You can get the board, maybe they're not aware of looking at it from that angle, and they may start looking at it differently and calm their demeanor if that's necessary. But it also just shows an openness to try to work in the same direction.
So you, as chairman of the CPC, invited in your most vocal critic, put him on the agenda and chatted about his concerns for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And that would be the kind of way we'd expect you as a selectman to deal with people with different opinions?
Yeah, we're not going to make any progress if we don't sit down and start talking, and I think that's a big part of it. and the people, and that's why people don't feel that there's enough give and take between the board. One of the things when you're on the Board of Selectmen, you're liaison to a lot of different committees, and it's your job to be the communicator between them and the town administration and town meeting too. You owe it to them. I think it's a big part of the job is to be as available as you can, which I've always tried to be. And you have to always keep in mind that even though I might not agree with this person or that person, I understand that they're trying to do what they think is best for the town. And somewhere in between is probably what you need to get to a little bit more. Paul Trendowitz, when he put in the marina at the end of our street, I was very vocal about that. Paul and I, we sat down this morning and shot the breeze for a half hour. We've always gotten along, even after we'd disagree in a meeting. They'd find us out in the parking lot shooting the bull. Life's too short. Maybe having grown up in the military like I did, you moved around so often, you got a little bit better value for friendships, and you did what you could to preserve them. And that's how I'd like to think that I've been. I've been very approachable on all the committees I've been on. We have lots of public meetings. Mary Ford's been very good in publicizing us. When we have notices of meetings, usually my phone numbers on the page. And I think in a selectman's position, you have to be out there, and not just because of the size of the town. Because you look at somebody like Tom Menino, like him or not, you can't get a group of 20 people together without at least probably 10 of them having met the guy in person. So it's important to be out. It's important to hear. You can form your own opinions, and that can narrow your vision. And somebody might come up with something and say, geez, hey, look at it from that angle.
So talk about how your approach would work in a situation like what's going on in the police department now. We have folks that are advocating for hiring from within. Others believe that the job should be open and we should bring in somebody from the outside. Given that that's a staff position and a kind of an interdepartmental concern, how would you as selectmen get involved with that, or what would be your recommendations?
Well, the town manager, it's within his power to appoint, and the selectmen have 15 days to either say yes or no. In this current situation, I did speak out last week at the selectmen's meeting. My issue was with the way that the advertisement was worded. The example I used was in real estate. You can't advertise as a house as being in a family-friendly neighborhood because it's considered to be discriminatory or discouraging to a non-traditional family. And I think to do that in an employment, particularly where we're an equal opportunity employer, to give any kind of discouragement by saying we have a strong in-house candidate, it just doesn't settle well with me. I think there should have been more emphasis on experience versus just the master's degree thing, which again points out they want a master's degree for the police chief, but again not for the town manager. But all that being said, when Bill Quigley went through what he went through, was that 10 years ago?
Yeah, probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah. It flies,
I think
doesn't
things
it?
are bad just this recently. You
Yeah.
look back there, and
Yeah.
that was a little nuts too,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And I'm not sure if I was the first, but I was one of the first people to publicly speak up and to say that this isn't right. You don't treat your employees this way. I wouldn't let my boss treat me like that. Then the then town manager wouldn't let the Board of Selectmen treat me or him like that, and we shouldn't have been treating Bill like that. If you had something, put it on the table. If you don't, fold your cards up and go away. I would vote for Bill Quigley to be the chief. He has never had a arrest thrown out, which is not that common an occurrence. even on a technicality that I've known of. He has the support of the police department. The police union has sent a letter supporting him. The police department's coming out of its own tumultuous time with Mark. And again, Billy has the respect of the guys. He's a hardworking kid. When he came back on the force, my understanding was that he was asked or they would bring him back as a supervisor, and he insisted on coming in as a patrolman and working his way through. And considering some of the things that happened to him, he appears to me to have been able to just dust himself off and look for the horizon and keep right on chugging. I think there should be a search since they've done it, since they've advertised it, but I would have no problem supporting Bill.
But the advertisement's now been kicked out for many of the reasons that you talked about. And I think most people in town would agree with you that Bill Quigley's done an excellent job, and for all the reasons you've indicated, should be the chief. If there's that kind of a consensus around it, why bother doing the search? Why not just at least make that one easy and move on?
I think it's a case where the selectmen really shouldn't have gotten involved in it. It's not their decision to make.
Well, they got to, but then the ad would have gone forward, Russ.
No, I mean, it should have gone through the regular process where the town manager appointed the person, and the selectmen heard it and either voted it up or down. Because after the fact, it kind of trips Mike up a little bit. He's placed the ad at their request, he says, and if that's the case, well, they really shouldn't have gone there. There's a procedure in place, and you follow the procedure.
But the ad's now been pulled.
Yeah.
So if you were on the Board of Selectmen, would you just say, okay, forget about the ad was pulled, let's just bring, support just bringing Bill in as the chief and not bother with the whole search? I mean, it seems like you could do that at this point. Would you support that, or?
I think I would, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much a search is going to cost, but everything in the world seems to cost $20,000 when it's the government, and rarely below. I think it was kind of similar situation when Jim Hussey was the acting chief. By the time it was ready to appoint a full-time one, everybody was happy enough with him that he moved into the full-time position. Right. The devil you know. I'm not calling Billy a devil.
I'll make that clear.
Yeah, thanks. But no, if the procedure is to have the town manager do that under his powers in the act, he does that. Then it's the selectmen's turn to do their job and vet it and decide, yeah, this is our guy, or no, it's not.
Well, when we talk about the town, let's talk about the Town Manager Act. We have what's called the Strong Town Manager Act. And yet there's a lot that the town manager can do with little or no advice and consent of the Board of Selectmen. But should they? As a selectman, would you say to the town manager, listen, you do your thing, we'll deal with the overriding policy, we'll be the board of directors, you're the president, CEO, and you just go? Or would you say, go ahead, but let's keep the line of communication. It's important for you to understand, what our thoughts are on this.
Yeah.
Which direction do you think is best?
Actually, in the corporate structure analogy, I'd say the town meeting is the board of directors. The CEO is the selectman, and the town manager would be the administrative officer. I think the board should not micromanage the town manager, but obviously the communication lines are very important. We saw what happened when Mike wasn't communicating to their satisfaction, both in job performance, in the hit that morale of the employees took, in the hit that the reputation of Cohasset took, in that kind of a tumultuous situation. And I think if the board, I think part of the reason we have some of the problems we have is that the board hasn't been exerting enough influence. I likened the town manager I think I was talking with Steve Gomer a couple days ago, is like a racehorse. If you open the corral, they're going to take off. And you need somebody up there who's reining them in, but the person reining them in has to know when to let them run a little bit too. But they have to take, I think the board has to take a more hands-on approach to the town manager than they have.
So another issue that seems to fall within that area is the proposed redesign, relabeling of the town hall committee, town hall, I'm going to say volunteers now, employees. No, well, no, I was going to say employees.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, is he moving forward with that on his own? Do selectmen need to get involved?
I think the selectmen should get involved. I think we should get some HR professionals involved. I used to be in banking, believe it or not, and I was in a bank, Mutual Bank, which is a large bank in Newton. We merged with Suffolk Franklin in Boston. So suddenly we had two banks that were very aggressive in mortgaging and other fields that had separate staffs all ready to go, and they're merging them into one. And there was a series of meetings with the whole bank there, which is, from what I can gather, yet to be done with the employees here in town. One of the selectmen recently stated that the employees don't run the town. And that's true to a certain extent, but they do make the town run. And with the bank that I was in, the president of Suffolk Franklin had worked his way up from a teller. The president of Mutual Bank had walked in as the president, and he didn't have good communication with the rest of the staff. I was an officer, and we had fairly good communication with him. But the president who came up as the teller understood that the face of the bank was that teller. It's the teller who, when you walk in, says, "Pat, I saw the show the other day. Mark, you're getting ready to go to DC. They don't hit you for an ID." That's what keeps bringing the customers back, and that's the face of the bank. And the town employees are the face of the town. A lot of people are never going to meet Mike in a sit-down, one-on-one situation, but they're going to run into Carol and Beth when they go in to register to vote or to get a dog license. They're going to run into Marie if they go into the building department to get a permit. And while I think there certainly needs to be a review, and there probably are positions that can be either merged or or eliminated, that we owe it to the employees to include them in this. The thing that's bothering me about a lot of the stuff that's been going on, we're hearing a very sterile picture of these little, there's 10 boxes on this whiteboard that go down to 9, that go down to 8. But those boxes are all people. And you're going to be affecting their lives in a major way in an economy where the employment's not that great. And I think you have to be respectful of them because just like they do make the town run, they can trip you up if they want to too. You can have sick outs. You can have people just taking 10 minutes to do a job that should take them 1 minute. And all that does is causes heartaches on the part of the citizens, and that works its way up. So you're ending up costing yourself time listening to complaints that could have been probably avoided if you'd listened to the people who actually do the job, know how it's done, and do it every day.
Russ, financially, is the town on the right track? Are we heading in the right direction?
Seems to be. I think Mary Gallagher is doing a very, very good job. I've been working with her on CPC, and she has a thorough knowledge of that. She's a very pleasant person to deal with. We haven't had problems with looking at overrides. I mean, what's the last override we had?
A long time ago.
I worked with enough at the time, the citizens group, and I mean, it's long enough that, God, half those people are gone in one way or another. So it seems to be on the right track. I think Situate uses an advisory committee that puts out its own report at town meeting as well. And don't get me wrong, I think Peter and the whole advisory board does a great job. Personally, I haven't had such a great batting record with them, with CPC.
Hasn't seemed to matter though.
Well,
the final analysis.
well, yeah, it may not appear to matter, but it certainly influences, because I listened to their questions, and it was the same reason I had Steve get involved with capital budget, and we're starting to look at different programs in a little bit different way. So I think that give and take is beneficial to everybody.
So there's a lot of talk about the unfunded or the ballooning benefits package that our retirees.
The $36 million.
Right. What are your
gorilla.
thoughts on what we're going to do about that?
Well, yeah, along with funding stabilization funds, we're going to have to start tithing for that. It's not going away. It's going to get larger. Every town's got it. And it may be something that we may want to sit down with other towns our size and see how they're approaching it too. We don't have all the right ideas, but it's something we're going to have to tackle. It's $10 million larger than our annual budget is. They talk about people who are buried in credit card debt. Hello, here we are. And I understand they formed a committee to start looking into it. But that's something that really it's going to have a big impact on. I mean, in the 28 years that we've been here, I've seen so many kids that were high school kids when we moved in who can't live here now. And that's going to happen and continue to happen. And the constant turnover, as the town attracts people who are, I don't mean transients in a negative way, but they'll move in for 4 or 5 years and then they move out. And it affects the character of your town at some point too. I mean, I look in the Parker Ave area, we had Freddie Blossom sold his house. He was the 5th generation in the house, knocked down. We'll get a McMansion. Duncan McCormick's house, knocked down. Sold for over $1 million to knock it down. And Benji Watson's house just recently sold and will probably get knocked down. And it just whittles away at the character of the town. We have a hard enough time getting people to volunteer for things now. We're going to start getting to be one of the local brokers said we're going to look like the Wellesley Hills of the South Shore.
Oh, God help us, I hope not. But the affordability of the town, economic diversity,
Yeah.
that is a big issue, and I think it's an issue that concerns a lot of people. But what can we really do about it? I mean, what can the town government do about that?
Well, to a small extent, CPC is starting we have to set aside funds into the different categories.
For affordable housing.
For affordable housing.
One of you.
And I mean, we don't have enough in there now to buy a property. But I would have loved to have gotten involved in the property in West Corner. Use CPC funds for that. That would restrict it to the affordable guidelines forever. And it does bring that kind of diversity. You get a development like Avalon, and there's a lot of police calls up there. It's a big impact on the infrastructure of the town. And it also lends to the lack of permanency some people may feel moving into the town, where single family, 2-family. At one point with Haggerty, we looked at taking the Haggerty house, and first we tried to sell it, and town meeting said no, which was too bad because we could have probably recovered 2/3 of our costs right then. And then we also looked into it as maybe affordable housing, and that was voted down, which I found disappointing because one of the main reasons was it's too nice a piece of property for affordable housing.
But for people that want it, and the affordable housing would be nice, a unit here, unit there, and so forth. But for folks that want to be able to stay in their homes, for instance, we have a lot of people who have lived in Cohasset for a very long time, raised their families and so forth, and are widows and widowers, or just folks on a fixed income. can't afford the taxes. I mean,
Yeah.
and the taxes aren't going down anytime
Oh, no,
soon.
no.
So is there anything that can be done for those folks?
That was the case in Freddie's case. His taxes were croaking him. He's living on a retirement pension from the Coast Guard. I know that we allow people to defer their taxes, but the problem is right now, a lot of those people are, our parents are roughly age. I mean, my mother's 91, so she's probably a little on the high side, but that's a generation that I don't think would think of not paying their
Depression
taxes.
era.
Yeah, yeah. There's just something foreign to that about it. The fact that it's going to be a lien on their house. And I don't know what we do honestly to keep them here in town. But I know that the ones that have left since I've been here are very noticeable by their absence. And it's those people who made this town what it is currently. When we did the presentation for the Historic Society, I ran off names like Mary Fleming, Bert Pratt, but also current names like Merle Brown and Glenn Pratt, who've done tons and tons of stuff for the town. And we've got a lot of people now coming up through the ranks, so to speak, who haven't even been into the Historic Society. I had one board ask me what was the contribution of the Historic Society to the town. And that's, it's going to lose its feel pretty quick if we don't do something to keep those people there. But what it is, I don't know. We've got the housing at 60 Elm, but that is a major issue that we have to be looking at along with the OPEB. We're going to have a pretty full plate coming up pretty soon here in the next day or two. Another thing I think we need to be looking at is dredging the harbor. Right now, I walk the dog through there every morning, and you may have noticed over the years, having talked with me, that I have a tendency to talk with people. And I talked with some of the fishermen and the lobstermen. On new and full moon, they can't get out of the harbor on 2 hours of low tide on either side. And even if it's, fishermen, and fish that big suddenly becomes that large, let's just say it's an hour. If they can't get out, how are all the pleasure craft going to get out?
So we need to get to the Army Corps and...
Well, yeah, we have to get Army Corps approval still. There was a federal application that we think is still valid. But because of the fishing fleet, we're able to get government help in dredging it, number one, but it puts us on a better list than if we didn't have it. And it supports, in the end, part of the character of the town, and it supports some of the locals in the town. Fishermen can make fairly good money, but not lately. And to live in this town is impossible for the fishermen. Our house was owned by one of the Figueredos. I have people who remember coming to my house to buy lobsters. It just, that's woven into the fabric of this town.
Sure.
That we need to do something to help them, but we also gain an advantage by having them. People in the yacht club, the sailing club, I sail a laser, so I only need about 6 inches of water to get through. But it's going to be a big problem. Plus, it's going to cut down on the flow of water. The harbor's in bad enough shape as it is. Paul Patterson can tell you he's been planting clams by the hundreds, and none of them survive. So there's something else we need to take a look at doing.
So among the many issues we talked about, what things are you looking, aside from them, to focus on as selectmen? What do you think are the important issues that you want to work on?
Opening communication with people. It's a diverse group. There's 5 people, and right now, either for whatever reason, people don't feel that the board is accessible to them. And I think that really is the major problem facing Cohasset right now, is a lack of confidence that people have in the selectmen, the lack that they feel that their voice isn't being heard, that town meeting votes are being ignored. Like it or not, town meeting can drive you nuts, but that's how we're governed. And I think it's just grading too many people in a wrong way, and it's exacerbating the nastiness that's going on when you read things in the blogs and everything. So I think that's really, honestly, the number one priority in my mind. I want to see us continue to use to keep the stabilizing fund funded well, because we're going to have a lot of problems coming up. But my primary interest right now is to try to get the town employees to realize that they are part of the process. They're not just cogs in the wheel. And to let people know that the selectmen will be available to you. You want to call it home, call it home. But we got to get people to start coming to volunteer for the town. We have a lot of boards that are missing people. And it's very important to me to see this kind of an atmosphere end.
Russ, thanks so much for coming in. Our
Yeah.
time is up.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you at the debate.
Thank you. Yeah. 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight,
we'll be filming.
Okay.
29th.
Great,
Exactly.
great.
So thanks. We'll
Yeah.
see you then.
Thank you very much.
And make sure that you keep an eye out for the debate. We will be filming it on the 29th, and it'll be up and shown many, many, many times between then and the election. So you can see the candidate interviews that we've done and also the debate, and hopefully help you make a more informed vote come election on the 11th of May. But for now, I'm Mark DeGiacomo for Pat Martin and our entire crew here at our town. Good night.